Welcome everybody to podcast number 4. It is a pleasure to have you along. I'm very grateful for the people that have been listening to me and also sent me very kind messages regarding my last podcast, which was an interview with Dave Stairs, an amazing vocalist from Daventry, just outside from where I live. Very entertaining and a true gentleman, really, and a great artist. So thank you, Dave, for providing me with that fantastic interview. If you haven't checked out the interview, please do on podcast number 3. My name's Glenn Hallam. I'm still coming from Corby in Northamptonshire, which is in the middle of England. The reason we're still coming from here is because my studio's here, but we're still not allowed out. I'm hoping things will change very, very soon. So during one of my previous podcasts, I was talking about my time at school. And my time at school was, well, it's different. Maybe different to some of the people listening. It was the 1970s, and it was hard. It was quite brutal at times. But now we're coming up to the 1980s. Now, a lot of things changed in the 1980s. Culture was had a big change to how people thought and how they dressed, of course, because fashions and change as we go along. Now, culture is a massive thing that I talk to my students with regards to music, because music can then affect culture and our taste becomes very fashionable. And so 1980s, we just turned to 1980s, and I'm 14 years old, and I'm not the cool kid at school. I'm certainly not the cool kid at school. I'm still going down the music block. I'm now playing with this band that we're in the sixth form block, and we'd done a few sort of shows, and I'm also playing in the school band, and I'm doing what I can to make a mark in my music sort of career during school. Now, one of the things that was great about that was the fact that we did a lot of concerts. And so I kind of learned in the trenches, as you say, by doing these. I was very nervous. I still, like I say, wasn't that cool to be involved in a school band. But nevertheless, I enjoyed it. It gave me that thing where I felt that I was special. It didn't matter what anybody else thought. One strange scenario that just comes to mind is that this particular night I was I was never really the sports guy, but because one of my friends was involved in rugby and the cricket team, I joined the rugby and cricket team, but it was just to hang out with my friends, really. That was a bit cooler than hanging down the music block. And so I had cricket practice one night, but what it had done, it was the same night as band practice with the school band, a school brass band type of thing. And guess where I wanted to be? I wanted to go down the music block and rehearse with the band, because I think we may have had some concerts coming up. I can't remember. Anyway, so I bombed out of cricket practice and went down to the music block and played the rehearsal, went home, did all the things. Forgotten about the cricket practice. I just let it go, rightly or wrongly. But the next morning, we had assembly, as they do now. And when I commented that 70s was quite harsh, I'm sitting on the floor in assembly in the certain year groups, as you do. And this particular teacher, who will be, I'll keep him nameless because I think he's still around. He stood up and they started talking about the cricket practice. And he was angry that some people did not turn up to cricket practice. He stood up and singled out those people that did not turn up. He stood up and he called my name on that list, and he absolutely just said that we let the school down. This is an important thing for us to do, and he really made me feel small among some others. And I think that was the turning point for me. I think music was definitely my thing. I was so insulted that they'd singled us out and made us feel really, really bad. And that's where my sports career finished, because I was so annoyed with them. And at that point, and I say it was a turning point, it really was, because I didn't do sports ever again. I mean, I did my games lessons, which I had to do, but I never went for any trials of any county, rugby, cricket, or anything. I just stopped. And I think that was the point where I turned around and said, music is definitely where I'm at. It's what I enjoy. Nobody is going to make me feel that small in front of my friends. And that's what I did. And although it, wasn't the coolest thing, I knew in my heart of heart that that's what I wanted to do. So from that moment then, I, with my parents one day, it was actually my father, and we're walking through Kettering, and it was in the days where you kind of went out to shop and had coffee at home. Now you don't. You tend to have coffee out and then you shop at home because of the internet. So we're wandering around town, and this is in Kettering in Northamptonshire. And we come across this drum shop. Now, it wasn't totally a surprise, because one of my friends lived just around the corner, and I'd been to his house and I'd seen it, but I was shy. So I didn't want to go into the shop. And but this particular day, my dad turned around and said, let's go and have a look, because my dad was a trombone player. You will know from my previous stories. And so he was encouraging me to play the drums. And because he'd noticed that this shop had caught my attention, then we were going in. So we went in. So this wasn't your standard music shop. This was, all you could see in the window was a bunch of drums. Now, I didn't know what those drums were. I was later to find out how different they were. But they weren't just the kits of drum kits in the window saying, come and buy me. They were actually what they called triple drums and snare drums. And they were part of a marching band. But it wasn't the typical sort of UK marching band. It was the American-style school marching band, where you had like 3 drums across the front, and then you'd have snare drum players, you'd have your bass drum players. And they would have the girls that would, chuck up the poles and stuff like that, and I forget what it's called now. And so it was exciting, because the whole idea of that was just, I don't know, it just got me. So we went in the shop, we were looking at the drums. They were all a bit different, a bit strange. I'd never seen anything like it in my life. And so he explained to my father what the idea was. And it was to create this American marching band. I didn't realize at the time that's what he was trying to do. But my dad was doing this. And he put my name down. Okay, he put my name down. And so that was it. We left the shop, wow, look at them drums, etc. And then it's got to be 6 months later that my dad got a phone call. By then we'd got a phone, by the way. That's another story. My dad got a phone call and said, would Glenn like to come along to a band practice? And of course, I'm really nervous, but yeah, I do. And what it was, like I said, American style band with the majorettes and stuff like that. And they were actually practicing at a local school. And so my dad took me, I think. We arrived at this practice night, and there's a bunch of other children that can play musical instruments. And it was all like the xylophone bells that they hold, snare drums, triple drums, like I said, which are 3 toms, and a big harness that went over your shoulder. And we went through this, what do you play? And, I'm a drummer, this, that, and the other. And bearing in mind, I'm still playing with the band at school and the rock band from the 6th form block. And so I was handed, because I was quite tall, I was handed these triple drums, and I put them onto my shoulder and played these various rhythms, and they went, yeah, yeah, yeah. And as it progressed over a period of time, the band started coming together. Now, when I said earlier in the 1980s, there's quite a culture thing. Music was changing. We're now listening to Spandau Ballet and, well, Duran Duran for me, actually, for those that know about that. I was just hooked on that band. The melodies, the rhythms. I was a massive Roger Taylor fan, and I found all the electronic sort of stuff really interesting. But I still had this desire inside me to play that old style brass music that I'd learned from a kid. So this band, this American style marching band, was just what I needed. Just what I needed. Because then I realized that I can actually travel with this band. Because at the time they were saying, well, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And I'm like, wow. Now, as you could imagine, that type of group, where they would do like garden fates and stuff like that. And that was exciting in itself. But then it turns out that this guy who run this band had connections in London. I am 14 years old. I live in a council house. And for those that don't know, they're the government-run houses that you just rent. So we didn't have a lot of money. And do you know what? That's fine. It was just what I knew. I didn't know any different. So we didn't have a lot of money. So this guy turned around and said, we are going to London. It was in the times when I was at the age, has anybody been to London? Oh, no, I haven't. Oh, yes, I have. I've been twice. I'd never been to London. I'm 14 years old. We didn't travel. You didn't have the continental holidays that we do now. 14 years old and I'm going to London. I've never been so excited in my life. So this band get on the coach. We go to Poplar in London. And did it open my eyes? Oh, did it? And I think this then started the addiction for kind of wanting to travel and go and play music in another place. You know, music was starting to all of a sudden become a little bit cooler in my world. You know, I'm going to London. And even now, in my 50s, if I've got a gig in London, which I've done plenty now, I think, wow, that's just going to be the best. So we go into Popular and we start kind of working with this band and doing various things. We came down, we rehearsed with them, we learned some of their rhythms. I then start creating rhythms and cadences for marching bands. And I get quite friendly with a guy, and we start doing stuff together. And I'm still then, 14, 15, 16, this kind of age. And so we start making these rhythms, and these happen, right? So we then come back, and then we do this probably, I don't know, I can't remember how often we did it, but probably once every couple of months. So we go down to Popular London again, and I don't really know what's going on. All I know, and what I've been told this particular trip, is that we are going to go and do a performance with the London band. Now, the band were called the Redcoats, and yes, they had all the uniform. Talking about fashion in the 80s, I had to put this big red tunic on, and black trousers and boots, and this hat that had this kind of feather out. It was like perfect. If any of my friends at school would have seen me, I'd have been, I don't know, I dread to think. I don't even know whether they know to this day that I did that. Anyway, so this particular day we go down to London, and we know we got this performance. It's the Lord Mayor's show. And seriously, years ago, I don't even know whether it still happens. I don't think so. I can't remember. Well, I remember seeing it on the telly, And it was kind of a big event because I got into marching drummers and I was watching it. I was excited when I see them. So I don't know when it happens now, but so this is like, holy, this is a big deal, right? I'd see it on the telly. So anyway, we all congregate in the area, and bearing in mind this is two bands. So there's probably about 30 of us. There's probably another 40, because they were a bigger band, of them. So instantly you got that many people, 70s, with a bunch of girls doing the majorettes, the flags, and us as drummers. So we get together, okay? We practice the songs that we're doing together, because some of them were different, but mostly they were the same. So we do all that. Then there's another band that arrive. And it turns out that there is a red coat band that he'd set up in Swansea in Wales. Well, I had no idea this was happening. I didn't even know there was one in Swansea. I couldn't have told you where Swansea were. I had no idea. Although, in fairness, I had been going to Wales on a holiday with my parents and camping. So that's another story. So this band joined as well. So as you can imagine, we're all roughly, I'm making these numbers up. I know it was huge. I mean, there's 70 already and there's another, 25, 30 people that join this band. So you're talking almost 100 people. And we do the Lord Mayor's show with this band, all dressed up in the same clothes. And it is I was just like, whoa. I mean, I'm one little person out of all these people, and I was playing triple drums at the time. And I think that was a life-changing moment for me with regards to performance, because I don't know where I am in London. I know where Poplar is now. Okay, it's in Tower Hamlets, just in case I get that right. So I don't know other areas of London because I'd never been to London, only in those trips down for the few months. So I'm marching along, and we're going through these places that just look big. I'm marching at the time with the band, we're playing the music, we turn a corner, we go through this huge arch, and the bricks on the road change to red, and at the bottom of this road, no word of a lie, bearing in mind I didn't know this, right, I can see Buckingham Palace. And I'm thinking, it's just surreal. It's just surreal. And I remember the feeling. I was thinking, wow. I'd never been to London, remember? Seeing Buckingham Palace in front of me as I'm marching down the Mall. And I was like, this was life-changing. It's making me shiver just as I talk to you, because it's like, you ever done that gig where you kind of think, where am I? I am here. I'm doing this. This is really happening. You kind of have to pinch yourself. Well, that's how I was. At a 14-year-old child, I marched down the Mall towards Buckingham Palace. And I guess my point here is that not only the assembly where I was kind of, made to feel really small, but now I knew that I'd made the right choice. Getting back to school, I felt special, and it didn't matter what anybody thought about me being down the music block. And I knew that I wanted to do this. I wanted to travel. I mean, from there on in, that was probably the biggest one we did. We did a lot of carnivals and various things like that. And even did my local carnival, which was pretty special. And I used to fantasize about playing the snare drum, marching along the streets of Kettering. That was my goal. That was the thing that made me excitable. And it meant that I was somebody. And for that reason, I was just so happy. And thereon after, we're coming up to the exam time in school, and I found that particularly hard. But all that time, as far as I was concerned, I was actually a drummer and very, very proud of it. And I was proud of what I'd achieved at that point, and it didn't matter what else was going to happen. And so growing up, that's where I'm at that particular point. When I leave school, I then start finding other bands, which I'll tell you in another podcast. I hope you've enjoyed my story. I hope you can relate to some of what I've been talking about in your own lives as a musician. If you're not, there might have been them life-changing moments which made you the person you are. But that's certainly one of them. To be able to do that, I have now been in London very many different times, and so thank you for listening once again. As I said in the introduction, it's a pleasure having you here. Thank you for all the support you've given me. Until next time, take care of yourself, and we'll see you soon.
Jitterbop, 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 we're gonna rock a jitterbop, 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 we're gonna rock and she's